In life's journey, we must seek to reflect, learn, and grow. Welcome to the Road to Rediscovery with your host, Aubrey Johnson.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Road to Rediscovery. I'm your host, Aubrey Johnson. The Road to Rediscovery is about reflecting on past life lessons to learn and grow from them and to pay it forward and help others who are struggling through dark times. I want to start with asking a question or two, something for us to think about. All right. What is the true essence of our character at its core? How do we begin the journey to learn of our own character? Again, at its core. Some may begin their journey by connecting with their faith and like minded people. Others may be called to their cause by what they see or what they hear. Either way, these are people who take action. They take action. What's my other question is what stirs inside the heart and soul of these individuals when they see something that is wrong, and what compels them to stand up, raise their voice, and move? Dr. Martin Luther King once said, "Take the first step in faith. You don't have to see the whole staircase, just take that first step." My special guest has taken that step a long time ago and continues to rise and uplift those around her and beyond. She's a former attorney, an international business architect, and the organizer of the March of Women's Lives, the largest march in the history of the US. She recently delivered a TEDx talk on leadership and diversity in Madrid, Spain. Now, these distinctions of prominence, they don't come without struggle, pain, and despair. Hearing her journey will no doubt captivate you and understand the foundation in all she does today to advocate for what is right. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to introduce Madam Nselaa Ward to the show. Madam Ward, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
Yes, thank you. I'm really excited to be here. This is amazing. I love your show. So, thank you for having me.
Oh, no, absolutely. We reciprocate. So I am so excited for you to share your journey with the listeners. Okay. So for us to kick things off, can you start by just giving the listeners a glimpse into your upbringing and the elements and events that put you in the direction to the work you do today?
Sure. That's a long story. I'll try to
Yeah.
truncate it a little bit. My name is Nselaa Ward. A lot of people, when they're trying to enunciate my name or pronounce my name, they say Nselaa, but it's Nselaa. So thank you for pronouncing that correctly. I currently have a business architect firm in Atlanta, Georgia. Actually, one of the top business architect firms in the state. But prior to being a business architect, I was an attorney. I did business bankruptcy and criminal law. During that time, I was able to help free over 300 years of Black lives from the criminal industrial complex. I also worked with the National Organization for Women as the National Field Director for Women of Color, where I organized protests, demonstrations, and civil disobedience. So I was basically a professional international troublemaker for the largest women's organization in the world. Which is definitely
Wow.
an experience in itself. It was amazing. But like, my story didn't always start out that way. I grew up in crack houses and corner blocks. But that really helped me to build an amazing resilience that led me to the path that happened a little bit later in my life. So yeah, that's the short version of it.
Gotcha. No, and thank you for sharing that. I mean, I have a series of questions popping in my head as you went through the short version of who Nselaa Ward is, right? So, one thing I wanted to ask you is 300, 300. I'm sorry, was that 300 years
Yeah,
of
300
lives?
years. Yes, 300 years of
Wow.
Black lives in particular,
Oh.
that were eventually supposed to be a part of the criminal industrial complex, supposed to go to prison.
Mhm.
But myself and my partner at the time, we helped free over 300 of those years. So it was definitely a journey. It was a
Oh,
journey.
oh, I bet it was. I bet it was. Now, with different houses and areas that you grew up in, like you said, that was kind of like the framework to help build the resilience that you have now. Was there a pivotal person who kind of kind of demonstrated or showed that, hey, there's another way or another meaning of life, there's another direction besides the environment that you're in?
I think that I always had vision. I knew that ever since I was 8 years old that I wanted to
Hmm.
be an attorney.
Hmm.
And I grew up in a community that believed in by any means necessary. So even though, I was in my current state where I did grow up in crack houses and I grew up around rock stars. We call them rock stars. Other people may, know them as crack addicts or people
Yeah.
that were addicted to crack cocaine. Some communities even say crackheads. We don't say that because in our community, they're rock stars because they're
Right.
surviving crack cocaine addiction.
Gotcha.
But I grew up with a lot of rock stars who taught me not to be afraid of no and to always be willing to say yes, right? So if you've ever grown up with any rock stars in your life, they, sometimes they come to you and they ask you for $5 every day. And that's what I remember growing up. They would always come up and ask you for like $5. My uncles, my cousins, my friends, my mom's
Yeah.
friends, they'd be like, let me get
Yeah.
$5. And you'd be like, no, I don't have
Mm.
$5. And they'd be like, let me get $5. You'd be like, no, look, don't ask me for $5. And they asked you 10 more times. Like you
Yeah.
never said no, like the
Yeah.
first
Yeah.
10 times until you're finally just like, you know what? Here's the $5.
Here
Get
it
out my
is.
face. Leave
Right.
me alone. Go away. Don't ask me again. Like
Yeah.
they never wavered at no.
Mm.
No just meant that you didn't understand what it was that I was asking you, right?
Right.
And I knew that if they could have that type of resilience, then it was nothing for me to be able to have resilience in my life because I felt like they were surviving something that I had never survived before and
Yeah.
something that I didn't have to survive because I saw them going through their struggles. So
Right.
if they could survive and not worry about anything that anybody had to say about them, not worry about people talking about them, not worrying about police officers,
Right.
if they could survive it, then I could survive it. So that gave me the resilience not to be afraid of no moving forward because I definitely had to be, had to hear a lot of no's in my life, especially coming from a community where I did have a criminal, I had a criminal history. I was a sex worker from the ages of 12 to 19 on and off. So even, becoming an attorney,
Yeah.
a lot of times, everybody's like, you're not gonna be able to do it. You got this going on, you got that going on. Nobody's gonna let you be an attorney. Nobody's gonna let you represent them. So I heard no 1,001 times,
Mm.
in the beginning, and I had to, just keep up my resilience and be able to say, you know what, it doesn't matter if they said no, somebody is gonna say yes. So I was always open to and ready for that yes that I knew was eventually coming.
Wow. Salah, and I don't mean this in the wrong way at all. I mean this with all the love and respect. One word, as I hear you share this with us, one word that really is resonating with me right now, and it may also have something to do with that picture behind you, is the word fierce. The word
Mhm.
fierce, unwavering, right? We hear about resilience an awful lot. You've learned some incredible lessons from those who like bothered you while growing up, and you've learned how to take that lesson and apply it to your growth. Like taking not taking no for an answer. If they hear no, that means they didn't completely hear what I'm asking for. You know, um,
Mhm.
I see an intense fierceness within you that is just doesn't care what other people think if it's in the light of what's right, not caring what other people think, and at the same time, the love and respect for others and what they're going through or for their viewpoints and so forth. But this fierceness or this fire had to have been established way, way, way back growing up, like you said, like as a little girl. Would that
Mhm.
be
I will absolutely, I will absolutely
okay?
say no, and I think it's not necessarily not caring about what people say because I think that
Okay,
we all care about what people say, and
right.
there is this community of people or people celebrities and stuff. They'll be like, oh, I don't care what anybody, I just don't listen to them, and that's
Mm,
not realistic because
right.
as humans we're all interconnected, so we
Mm,
care about what other people think. I think the
yes.
difference was that I was able to understand that if somebody else had an issue with me, that that was their issue, that it really had nothing to do with me. It was a problem that they were dealing with internally in themselves. So, you know, when people were resistant to giving me the opportunities that I felt like I deserved or I felt like I wanted in my life, I knew that it was an issue that they were having. It was a problem that they were dealing with. And it put me in the mindset to figure out how I could help solve their problem, and just realizing that it didn't have anything to do with me. You know, it had everything to do with them, and it helped me to be more so of a problem solver. You know, I try to focus on the solutions versus, you know, the hardships. So it focused my attention to those solutions. Like even dealing with the rock star community. I remember growing up, my uncle, he was the meat man, right?
Yeah.
And the meat man, like, he would always come to your house every week, and he had all these different types of meat, right? He would come with a big old coat because he just probably robbed, you know, Dixie or Food Line or Walmart, you know, all these different types of meats, right? And he would give you he could have anything you want for like $5. Like, you could get it. And we would get so excited because we knew that when he came, you know, on the day of the week he came, we was going to eat real good that day.
Good. Yeah. Oh yeah.
But on top of that, like, he was also able to get anything you want. Like, and he, you know, he'll bring the meat, but you'd be like, hey, you know, Christmas is coming up, you know, I need to get a bite for my kids. He'd be like, all right, I'll get you a bite in 2 days, you know. Or he'd be like, you know, my aunt, you know, she needs such type of medicine and she can't get it. He'd be like, you need it? I got you, you know, and he'll have it like in a week's time, you know. Like, you know, you need a lung. You know, somebody got an extra lung. You're like, all right, give me a couple weeks, I got you. You know, he would be able to say yes to anything that you ask for, right? And that taught me really also to be willing to say yes, even if you don't know how it's going to happen. Even if you feel like, you know what, there's no way that I can make this happen, but just be willing to say yes to opportunities, you know, and have faith in the process. You know, that really helped me.
I got you. So you're very goal oriented. You're very solution oriented. And
I have to be.
Yeah. No, I totally understand. So do you think that's fueled by some degree of optimism?
I do. I definitely. Okay. And you know, what's really interesting, right? I didn't used to call it optimism.
Okay.
I started calling it optimism over time. But one of the things when I was younger, I always participated in these oratorical competitions. And the oratorical competitions is actually what kind of let me know that whatever I was in today wasn't my forever. And the Optimist competitions, or the oratorical competitions, were held by this organization that was called the Optimist Club. And back then I didn't know what the Optimist Club was. I was like, what is Optimist Club, you know? But it really did, you know, over the years, even though it was just a speech competition to me then, you know, like, and I was participating in them, I think from like 12 years old up to 20 years old. And my son is currently, my son is 10 years old, but now he participates in the speech competitions and the oratorical contest. And he's an Optimist member as well, you know. But I always say that my biggest superpower, you know, is to be able to reframe things, to be able to see the positive about anything. Once I started changing my mind, because there was a point where I didn't, like, I was, you know, pessimistic about a lot of things, right? Because that's where I grew up, the community I was in.
Well,
you know,
the environment,
they were skeptical about everything, and they felt like, you know, there's no way to get out of this. Everything is negative around us. We just got to get out. So there was a lot of people that were like that. But once I started changing my mind, it was like something clicked, and I still don't know how it clicked, but it just clicked where the whole world opened up to me. It was like, wow, I could really just do anything, you know? So yes, it was, you know, that was my superpower, was the power to reframe.
So at what point, or where were you in your life when you realized that? Were you like mid-teens, high teens, just out of high school?
Well, when I developed a name for it was when it was in my adulthood, because I didn't realize what it was, the power to reframe, when I was younger. Like, I didn't develop the language for it until I was well in, you know, my 30s. But when I started feeling it and experience it, I remember I was with a client at the time, like one of my sex worker clients, right?
Right.
I tell you guys, I was a sex worker between the ages of 12 and 19. And when I say that, You know, it's, you know, I'm politically speaking, it's a politically correct term for hookers, prostitutes, streetwalkers, things of that sort.
Gotcha.
But I was with one of my clients, and he was like he was a really big client at the time, but he had really little legs. And I always remember, like, when I visually think about him, I think of him as like an ice cream cone, because like the bottom of his legs was really small, but his stomach would like flop over his belt at times.
Right.
And you know, this is kind of gross. I don't want to gross anybody out. If y'all think y'all gonna get grossed out, then maybe you want to close your ears a little bit. I won't go into too many graphic details, you know. But he would always wear these belts that were too tight for him around his waist, it was like tearing away at his skin and causing boils and stuff like that. And I remember looking up to him while he was on top of me and being really grossed out, because all of this like pus and sweat was just falling on me. And I was like, oh my God, like I have to change my life or I'm gonna kill myself, right?
Yes.
And I remember that's the moment where I was like, okay, you know, I have to do something. That was the clearest moment I remember, that I made the decision that I had to do something different. But even at that moment, I still didn't necessarily believe that I could do something different. I remember that I was in a criminal case for some stuff that I had done at that point. And my attorney at the time, the person that was representing me, he was like, you know, Nselaa, he's like, you're so smart. He was like, why? He's like, I don't even know why you're doing this. You know, he's like, I don't know why you're in this world. You need to be doing something else with your life. And I was like, you know, I said, you know, I always wanted to be an attorney, you know, but, you know, now, you know, that's impossible, because, you know, I done messed up, and I got all this stuff going on, and everybody knew I'm a sex worker and got a criminal history, and I done got in trouble, and, you know, it's just not an option anymore. And he was like, look, you know, he said, I know people that have committed murder and are still attorneys. He's like, never let anybody tell you that you can't do something, because they're just limiting themselves. They was like, you can do whatever you want, right? And I was like, really? Murder? You know? And that was the moment. It was kind of like, you know, wait a minute, you know, everybody all my life has always told me that I couldn't be, you know, an attorney for what, even when I was 8 years old, I remember I was in a play and I said I wanted to be an attorney, and the teacher, you know, was resistant to it, was like, maybe you should do something else. You know, we had like a school play that was going on, but everybody had always told me that this wasn't possible. And I realized, like, that was the moment that it clicked for me, that was their limitation, not my limitation. I was like, oh, I can, really, you know? So that it was first the moment that I had to do something different. I didn't know how I was going to do it. But I knew I needed to do it. And then when I got with my attorney, that's when I realized, oh, this is how I do something different. This is how it happens.
Love it. So if I'm hearing you right, you had to reframe how you received the skepticism and the feedback of people who doubted whether or not you could pursue the career as being of an attorney, right?
Yes. I had to reframe what I had been told all my life, what was possible for me. And I started realizing that what their expectations were didn't have anything to do with me. You know, how other people reacted had nothing to do with me. You know, I controlled what I did, that moving forward from that point on. So that gave me the power to kind of fight and push through all the resistance that I had moving forward.
Wonderful, man. That's beautiful. So Nselaa, here on the Road to Rediscovery, we try to drive home and emphasize, you know, for any type of outward development and growth, it all begins inward. And so it sounds to me that there has been a lot of inward focus that you've had regarding, you know, your own character, your own soul, your own feelings, and how you respond to things, and how you basically go through life, especially at an early age, right, in that type of environment. So, what can you speak to with the inward focus and thinking that you've had to apply that helped you and continues to help you to this day?
I mean, it's a lifetime journey. It doesn't happen overnight,
Right.
and you have to constantly I mean, it's like exercising. It really is. Honestly, you know how, you can exercise for a good few months and you feel like you're real strong and your body is tight, and
Yeah.
then you stop doing it for a while and all of a
Yeah.
sudden you can get up the stairs without getting out of breath.
Yeah.
It's like that. You have to constantly exercise because over time, we're surrounded by people that might not have that same perspective, people that might not necessarily feel like, the same, they don't feel the same resistance or
Right.
resilience.
Right.
And they don't have the ability to reframe. So they're, regularly focusing on what other people do and how they react. Right.
Yes. Yes.
And a lot of times what can happen is that, that can cause your muscles for resilience and reframing can get weaker because you're not constantly working them and moving them. So,
Right.
I've had to always make sure that, first of all, that I'm always working that muscle, like always reframing everything, like even little things, that happen to me on a daily basis,
Right.
whether
Right.
that be, waking up at a certain time,
Right. Right.
I spilled something on the floor and oh my God, my carpet is messed up. Oh, but this is great because I get to clean up all the nasty stuff that was on the carpet
Yes.
beforehand.
Yes.
Like constantly working that muscle so that you can have the power to reframe without even having to think about it. So it is something that I have to do every day, not because, I just want to, be
Yeah.
able to reframe. But if I don't work on reframing constantly,
Then that
um,
muscle just weakens,
it,
like you said,
it,
right?
it weakens. And on top of that, we're constantly surrounded by people that might not have the same mindset as you do. And that can
Right.
cause your muscles to really weaken a lot more as well. So I have to constantly
Mm.
put it in practice, like constantly put it in practice. It's a
No,
regular thing.
that makes a lot of sense. I love it. And yeah, we do have that muscle memory we need to continue working on. Um, you know, uh, no matter what the profession is. No, I mean, even just going through life, not even taking a profession,
Mhm.
reframing and constantly reframing with everything you do in your waking hours. Like you said, it's funny. You've heard of Terry Crews, right? On TV and everything.
Mhm.
Okay. Yeah. He's from Michigan. And I just recently read his book. He wrote a book about 2 or 3 years ago called Manhood.
Mhm.
And so he talked about how uh, in his adult years he had to learn how to reframe things that affected the way he responded to certain things like disappointment, failure, and those types of things. His response to those events, which happens to all of us, his response to those events were based on his upbringing and his parents and how they responded. And,
Mhm.
and and so he had to learn to reframe to think for himself
Mhm.
in, what is the true way of how I can address this. We
Mhm.
all have a choice, right? Yeah, yeah, we
Yep,
all have
that's
a
absolutely
choice.
right. Like
Hmm.
it's not even just our parents, our
Right.
siblings, our
Yeah.
friends, our mate, everybody around us will
Yes.
constantly tell you that things are failures in your life that you should
Hmm.
be upset about, or that you should be depressed about, or that you should be embarrassed about. Like,
Hmm.
this is a failure. How can you, not be upset about this? Look, people are
Right.
constantly going to try to get you to feel like there's something that is negative about your experience. You have to
Always.
have the power to overcome the negativity that everybody else is going to bring. And it's not their fault. That's all they know. Everybody around you is
Yeah.
doing the best they can, right? So it's
Right.
not, to say that, these people might not love you or might not care about you, but they're not at the same stage that you are. So you have to
Right.
constantly be aware there are people that are not going to be at the same stage. And you have to
Mhm.
be ready to reframe when you're hit with that, because it's going to come from everywhere. It's going to come from everywhere.
Absolutely. I mean, they may not even know that they're doing it.
They don't.
It
Most of
may
the time they
just,
don't.
no, you're right. It may just be the way they deliver a message or say
Mm-hmm.
something. It's the
They
way they
may
come
even think they
across.
may even think that they're working in your best interest. They
Yes,
and
they
they,
may
they
think that.
probably they probably think that they're working in your best interest. They're probably
Yeah.
feeling like I want to protect you. I want to help you. I want to
Mhm.
show you. What you need to do. And they, we just don't know what we just don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
You're right. And Salah, I have a quick question about that. And then I'd love for us to move on to talk about the amazing work that you're doing. All right. So, what type of awareness, what sense of awareness should one have when they are on the receiving end of this skepticism or negativity, from a person who um, may mean well. They may have the best of intentions. Maybe it's the only way they know how to come across, and on the receiving end of that, we receiving it, is there a level of awareness that we need to have of ourselves and of them to say, like you said earlier, we're all doing the best we can.
Mhm.
For lack of a better term, bless their hearts.
Bless them.
We're all doing the best we can. They're doing the best we can. They're a fellow human being. I love them. Here's how I'm going to reframe it and respond. All of that dialogue going through our heads as we're on the receiving end of that. What type of awareness do you think we need to have in order to, do that without hair trigger response of being defensive?
Well, the first thing we have to do, you have to, be quiet for a while, right?
Yeah,
Because if we
yeah.
respond instinctively, then we
Hmm.
may say something out of ego. And our
Yes.
ego is always going to try to take over, like it's always going to try to control the conversation.
Right.
Our spirit is really, it's going to make us think twice about it and
Hmm.
tell what we're authentically feeling and experiencing. But in order for our spirit to speak, we have to be quiet, right? So the
Hmm.
first thing, I mean, when you encounter that, when you encounter somebody that may love you, and that may be trying to look out for your best interest, but they just don't have that awareness. They're not there yet. As first,
Yes.
just realizing, like I said before, realizing that this is their experience and
Yes.
that their experience has nothing to do with you.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
that's the first thing, realizing that they are dealing with internal issues that they're fighting and that their fight is not your fight.
Right.
Having that conversation. The second thing, or the third thing, because the first thing is being quiet. The second is realizing that it's their experience. Sometimes people, on the third note, will come at us in an offensive way. They'll come at us really aggressive,
Yeah.
and taking the time to really see their loving essence,
Yes.
which means that sometimes we have to question ourselves and say, when have I felt like they have felt before, and I've
Right.
responded this way,
Right.
like, so that
Right.
you can understand that we're all very similar, and it's all based off either the emotion of love or fear. And
Yes.
once you really tap into that emotion,
Hmm.
you can give a heartfelt, spirit felt response, you
Beautiful.
know
Beautiful. Yes. Yes. I completely agree. And that step one is to be silent, be still, be silent. Right. Yeah. Yeah. And it all starts there. That's very foundational. Oh, Salah, man, that is wonderful. Wonderful. Let's go on and talk about some of the amazing things that you're doing. I mean, when it comes to, well, I'm gonna set the stage sort of, okay.
Mhm.
Um, Summertime 2020. Oh my gosh. And I know you've talked about this in a lot of other interviews and so forth. So um uh, uh you know, I'm a hopeless optimist, okay? And I try to find the best in everything. Now, at the same time, I try to be as much of a realist as possible. I mean, it is, take it for what it is and deal with it. You don't turn a blind eye, but at the same time, I look for that silver lining somewhere. A lot of stuff, perfect storm of things that happened over the summer. I don't have to tell you, you know, um, uh, uh, a lot of brutality, a lot of social injustice, a lot of fights for social justice, a lot of protests and so forth. Um, you know, and with for the right reasons, for the right cause. Um, but also in the midst of that, it seems like, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like from a D&I perspective, from a diversity and inclusion perspective, there has been more and a higher level of acknowledgement to um, um, influential women, okay, in a lot of different spaces, not just the political space, in leadership, um, but in technology, right, and the STEM programs, and just a lot of conscious acknowledgement for for women uh, of influence this year. And I know, like, you've spoken and been part of this march. What are your thoughts on that? Have you seen that as a silver lining? I mean, again, not to turn a blind eye to the reality of what we've been fighting for and continue to fight for, but what are your thoughts on that true acknowledgement?
Well, I mean, we did just get Kamala Harris as vice president. So,
Right. That's right. Sure did.
you
Absolutely.
know,
And I'm
we did
thrilled.
just
Trust me, I am thrilled.
a Black woman president, vice president. So I definitely
Yes.
think that that's the silver lining in all of this. You know, I yeah, I don't agree with all of Kamala Harris's policies, but I
Right.
am grateful for, what this has done for women and communities of color around the world.
Yes.
This is an
Yes.
international step
Yes.
in the right direction. And I think that, one of the things that I've always said about the Black Lives Matter movement, people think that it's very local, but it's an international human rights issue. And I
Right.
think that having a Black female president in office is going to bring international attention to what's going on in the Black Lives Matter movement. So I definitely think that is very important. I mean, I see silver linings in so many things. Like, for example, a lot of people were upset and insulted when Trump came out with his platinum plan.
Right.
His
Yeah.
platinum plan for Black folks. But
Uh-huh.
I was really happy when he came out with it, not because I felt like I was going to support it. I felt like it had a whole lot of holes in it.
Mhm.
But what I think that it did do is that it created a requirement for every candidate moving forward to make sure that they address their Black agenda. That and
Yes.
it let them know that this is important. Historically, a lot of people felt like they had to tiptoe around issues around the Black community because they felt
Yeah.
like white people would get offended.
Yeah.
White people would feel like, we're targeting a certain community, or
Hmm.
we
Hmm.
weren't universal, or we're
Yeah.
too biased towards a certain group. So when Trump came out with his platinum plan, and so openly and blatantly came out with his platinum plan, even though it was very weak, it set the plate so that every candidate moving forward will have to address the Black people. And I
Sure.
thought that that was very, very important. And I think that having, so many Black powerful women that are doing amazing things around the world is definitely a silver lining, and is setting a stage that we can't go back on. So yes, I definitely agree with you.
Oh man, that's wonderful, Salah. Thank you so much for sharing that. And yeah, I can tell you are an optimist as well. To find something in that platinum plan.
There
I
was
mean,
some insults to it, like, okay, really,
yeah, yeah,
but it served its purpose.
yes,
Its purpose
yes.
was to set the stage for some bigger things that were about to happen, and it served its purpose.
No, for sure, absolutely. And I'm a huge proponent of, historically, like you said, over the years. We can talk about from the mid to late 60s and even way back, days of slavery, Jim Crow era, and all that stuff. First there's this, uh, this whole segregation type thing, us and them, and discrimination. No, you can't eat in the front of the restaurant, go to the back, or no, you can't drink from that water fountain, all this sort of stuff. And then as that starts to kind of we start to integrate, then you have people, unfortunately, just thinking in the back of their minds, "Oh, why are they here?" And then you have people saying, "Oh, well, you know what? We shouldn't think that. Let's just sweep it under the rug, like you said, tiptoe around it, and not talk about these things that are happening,"
Mhm.
thinking that that was the right thing to do, and quote, keep the peace in the
Right.
house, so to
Mhm.
speak.
Mhm.
And then all this stuff breaks out that broke out this summer, you know
Mhm.
and I think at that point there was a wake-up call that a lot of people got, in saying tiptoeing around this is not the answer, sweeping it
Mhm.
under the rug is not the answer. Okay, we as a people, we need to talk about this, we need to address it, we need to take action and tell people this is wrong, this is right. What questions do you have, right? And people of other race, they need to, be forthcoming, on both sides. It's a two-way street, but we need to come together and have that conversation and no longer tiptoe around it, because that's not solving it at all. It's perpetuating it is what it is.
Absolutely. I actually hear that a lot when, I do this series called White Women Can We Talk, where we have conversations with white women around the world. It was initially around the country. Now it's going around the world, just talking about some of the issues that we deal with in our community every day. We talk about white supremacy. We talk about the relationship between Black women and white women, the relationship between Black women and Black men, and how that, how white women perceive that. We talk about the Karens, and the white women's necessity, to feel like they have to, basically be the overseer and call the police every time they see something wrong. But one of the things that I hear regularly that they talk about is exactly what you just said, was that, there was always this idea that we had to keep quiet about things. Let's just not talk about it. So they never really had the language to address racism and white supremacy, right? They knew it was there, but it was hush hush because, over the last few decades, what everybody tried to promote was this colorblind philosophy, right? And which is why I've never supported the idea of being colorblind. I think that we should definitely embrace each other's differences, but we grew up in this generation where everybody was like, oh, you have to be colorblind. I don't see color. I don't see you as a Black man. I only see you as a person, as a human, all of that, right? The cliche, right? So it put us in a position where we could never have a conversation about the racism and the injustice and the oppression that was going on in our country around the world, because you can't talk about racism if you're saying that you're colorblind, right? You can't say this is happening to you as a Black woman or a Black man if you don't see race at all. So I definitely think that caused a lot of destruction and oppression when we couldn't talk about it and we couldn't have those conversations. I'm trying to remember how I was going because I went on a big tangent. I don't
No, it's okay.
Went on this tangent. What was your original question? I lost my train of thought.
No, you addressed it. You addressed it completely. No, thank you for that. We talked about the silver lining. We've talked about, just addressing all that we have gone through, in this year. So I really appreciate you sharing that.
I remember. So it just came back to me. But yeah, so we had this color, the reason, because keep in mind, like a lot of people they want to know, well, what was so different about 2020? Why did people, start, all of a sudden paying attention to what's happening to Black people? Because of course we know in our experience that this has been happening to Black people forever in America, right? We've constantly been abused. And some people want to, justify, like, oh, well, we finally got the cameras and we finally got the video recordings, but we had video recordings decades ago, like I remember when they was talking about Rodney King getting beat up. We saw that on video, right?
Sure did.
And we still had decades of abuse, and police brutality after that. So it wasn't the fact that all of a sudden we got video recordings and social media, because we've seen it before. The difference is that, first of all, the country was quiet because of coronavirus, because of COVID-19, and it cost everybody, we were forced to pay attention, right? We were forced to be silent for a while and just to pay attention for what was happening around us. And once people were required to pay attention, then they couldn't ignore that conversation. They couldn't pretend that they were colorblind. Paying attention is the exact opposite. Like being quiet, being still, and watching and observing and seeing is the exact opposite of being colorblind. People want to close their eyes for decades and centuries and be like, I don't see this, right? But COVID-19 said, wait a minute, open your eyes, wake up, be quiet, and pay attention. And once people were required to open their eyes and pay attention, then they could see what was happening. And that's when we got all of these protests that were happening around the country all of a sudden, right? That was the power of protest. People get upset and they get discouraged about protesting a lot of times because they're like, what, I'm tired of marching and protesting doesn't do anything, and we're just beating our feet and making all these noise, and then they just end up beating us up again, right? Because especially because, back in, 4 years ago, we had Obama as president, which was a Black man, right?
Yeah.
And they were
Yeah.
still beating our butts in the streets. They were
Yeah.
still killing Black people, 4 or 5 years later, right? So people was like, none of this is working. I ain't protesting no more. I'm not doing anything, like they got pissed off and they got upset, but the power of protesting, like you said, is that it creates visibility. People have to start standing up. And when people stand up and protest, they allow themselves to be counted. And then you start to see, wait a minute, there's a lot of people that are experiencing this. There's a lot of people that are feeling like this place. Yes, that feel like me, right? Because sometimes even as Black people, we start to be like, we start to normalize it. Like I can say, even when I was practicing, I would start to normalize it to a degree. Right. Because I saw so many Black people that came to me like, man, this cop beat me up before he arrested me, and it was a part of you that starts to click in your mind and be like, oh, yeah, that happens. Of course they beat you up. Yeah. Like sure. So we start, even as Black people experiencing it, we start to normalize it and we start to be like, well, that's just the way that life is. But once you see other people start to stand up, you start to be like, wait a minute. Maybe this is not the way that life is supposed to be, right? Maybe it's not okay for them to say that we can't sit at the counters. Maybe it's not okay for them to say that we can't drink at the same water fountains. Maybe it's not okay for them to say that I can't have my hair in dreads when I come to work because that's unprofessional, right? When for centuries, Black women have been, putting wigs on and covering up our hair and saying, you know what, I don't want to dress because it's not professional, right? So we start to realize when more people stand up, that we don't have to accept the discrimination and the oppression that's happening around us.
The voice is louder and there's strength in numbers.
That's right. There's strength in those numbers. That's absolutely right.
That's awesome. Man, that's awesome. Nselaa, you have a tremendous amount of knowledge and insights from your journey, from the direction that you have been moving in all these years. I would love the listeners to know how they can connect with you or learn more about you and the great stuff you're doing.
Absolutely. So the first place I recommend is always going to the website, the firm's website. Just to give you a little bit of information about my firm, I have a business architect firm in Atlanta, Georgia, but we have clients around the world. And what we do is we build the infrastructure of small to medium-sized businesses. We work with small to medium-sized businesses to turn their hustle into an enterprise so that they stop having to reinvent the wheel, because a lot of times as business owners and entrepreneurs, we're, getting out there and just winging it, right? We're just going with the flow and then trying to do everything ourselves. We're trying to customer service and sales and marketing and fulfillment and bookkeeping and accounting, and we're wearing all these different hats, and we just eventually be mediocre at everything. So what we do is we build your infrastructure from scratch with proven systems, so that you have a system that is already proven and that you don't have to keep reinventing it. The second thing that we do with our clients, because most of our clients are not just the doctors or the lawyers that want to have a law firm. They're the lawyers that want to have, they want to be the Johnny Cochran of law, or they want to be the Dr. Phil of medicine. So we make sure that the world sees our clients as thought leaders, right? Instead of just experts or in addition to experts. And just to give it a little bit about that, the difference between an expert and a thought leader is that an expert can tell you how to do something, but a thought leader makes you think differently about it. So we take our clients on a tour around the world at colleges and universities and conferences, so that they can create their thought leadership. And then the third thing that we do, especially in times like this, is that we help our clients to build a digital stream of revenue, so that even if they are a brick and mortar business, or even if they traditionally have to touch their clients in order to serve them, that they constantly and regularly have a digital stream of revenue that's constantly working for them, so that eventually one day they don't have to be there, right? They don't have to be the one that's always in the office, and that their business can run without them. Because eventually, even if we do really, really love what we do, one day we want to retire, so that we can build legacy, so that we have something that passed down to our children. So the best way to get in contact with me about any of that is through the website. My firm's website is ninavafirm.com, which is NAVAFIRM.com. And you can book a consult with me on there at any point, or anybody on my team.
Awesome.
My personal website, just for me, when I go out and communicate with people and build and grow with people, it's Nselaa Ward, NSELAAWARD.com. Nselaa Ward, NSELAAWARD.com. My social media is all the same. My Instagram is Nselaa Ward. My Facebook is Nselaa Ward as well. My Facebook business page or fan page is Nselaa Ward fan page, so you can reach me there. Twitter is Nselaa Ward also. So there's a few different ways that you can reach out to me.
Oh, fantastic. And I'll make sure and put the links to the firm's website, your personal website, and social mediums. We'll have direct links to all of those on the episode show notes so that the listeners can directly connect to you while listening to this great conversation. Madam Nselaa Ward, I really, really appreciate this conversation. I appreciate you coming on the show. I'm just thrilled that we had this conversation. Thank you so much.
I am too. I'm so grateful for you having me. I really enjoyed this conversation today. And I hope I get to come back again. I hope you invite me.
I hope you do too, because, and trust me, I want to invite you. I would love for us to, a few months down the line, maybe into 2021, bring you back on the show and just update the listeners with where you're at, and any new projects or initiatives that are going on,
Absolutely.
I think that would be wonderful. So now we're going to go into a segment I like to call 3 for the Road. That's where I ask my guests 3 random yet thought-provoking questions, encouraging them to answer in 5 words or less. So what do you think, Nselaa? You think you're up for it?
Let's do it. Come on.
All right. Okay, here we go. Let's go. Woohoo. All right. 3 for the Road. For Nselaa, here's question number 1. Imagine this, if you will. You hold the highest power of rule in the land. So whatever title you want it to be, queen, empress, whatever. But you can only proclaim one law for all the citizens. What would that law be?
To love each other.
To love each other. I love it. Awesome. That's the foundation. That's the basis. All right. Question number 2. With the United States being known as the land of opportunity, freedom, and the melting pot, what other country do you think we can actually learn from an equality or rights perspective?
A country that we can learn from the equality or rights. Wakanda.
Oh, you had me there. I was listening intently. Wakanda forever. Oh, I hope that's not copyrighted. Hey, that's one word though. Love it. All right. Number 3. What is your advice for our youth when they carry the torch long after we're gone?
To develop their superpower to reframe. I think that is the difference. Oh, that's more than 5 words.
Game changer, right?
Reframe. Yep, that's a game changer. Yeah. Reframing is a game changer. Let's go with that.
Reframing is a game changer. Love it. That's 5.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. Well, Nselaa, that concludes our 3 for the Road. Once again, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show. I really look forward to us staying connected and having a sequel for this to continue this great conversation.
That's right. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I want to thank all of you for tuning in and listening. And like I mentioned earlier, we're going to have links for Madam Nselaa Ward's information in the episode show notes. Now, if you want to have VIP access to upcoming episodes and the guests before they're even published, then I encourage you to join our mailing list at roadtorediscovery.com. That's road, the number 2, and rediscovery.com. The Road to Rediscovery, it's part of a movement, a revolution. And guess what? You're now part of it. We're all roadies on this journey of life, and it sure feels good having you on the road with me. Thanks again for listening. We'll chat again soon.
The Road to Rediscovery is an AJ Shark production.